to us. So we sent our team to the mosque where this man worshipped. At first they said yes to an interview, but then they got a phone call, and suddenly things changed dramatically. Watch.
It seems that we're getting the runaround.
It's not a runaround. We're not doing any interviews. We're not speaking to anyone. We're stopping all media interviews. We're stopping everything now.
Now, with respect, sir, you told me not 10 minutes ago that I could speak to someone tomorrow morning.
And
said that no. Representative from CARE just called me back and said no.
Yep, we're all saying no. Everyone media-wise will have to leave. If not, I'll have to call the authorities.
Joining me now, Brooke Goldstein, who's a human rights attorney and director of the Lawfare Project. So CARE's trying to shut people down. This has happened a couple of times, we believe. They don't want them talking to Fox News because they don't like the way that we're discussing the case. They would rather see the case discussed the way it's being discussed on some other networks, and I give you the following example.
I would be remiss not to bring up the story out of Oklahoma. It is a story that I read as a workplace violence story.
There's over 500 workplace killings last year. Yep. We don't know about the religion of any of those murderers, but if someone is Muslim, it's got to be a terrorist.
And it went on from there.
Right. I mean, I think there's only one word to describe what the media is suffering from when it comes to the coverage of any types of acts where there's a possibility of religiously motivated violence, and that religion happens to be Islam. It's Islamophobia. And you have people like MSNBC's Melissa Harris Perry bending over backwards claiming she knows what the motive is, even though this is an ongoing investigation with the FBI, and we are continuing to learn about the facts of this case. She knows what the motive is and has nothing to do with religion whatsoever.
How does she know? And none of us knows for sure, but I urge her to go to the suspect's Facebook page, which law enforcement sources have confirmed to our local contacts, is legit. The family's not contesting it. It is covered with jihadist propaganda, including actual photos of beheadings. Who does that? Bin Laden. You can read in his own words all of his progressive radicalization, which clearly took place over the past year or 6 months in particular, Brooke.
Right, and that's what this Islamophobia is all about. It's trying to shame us as we question if there are theological motivations to religiously motivated violence. And if you look on the ground, if you look at the fact that he posted on Facebook a justification for beheading, if you look at the fact that he was fired for telling his coworkers that he was going to kill women if they do not conform to his version of Islam,
there is a report.
There is nothing racist about asking what motivated this crime and how we could prevent these similar types of crimes from happening in the future.
How are we ever going to get anywhere if the FBI, the president, everyone talks about how one of the major fears we have now is not just the group ISIS, not just Al-Qaeda, but homegrown radicals who self-radicalize off of the internet. Some have connections abroad, some have none. And they always talk about how those are the toughest ones to snuff out because they're not communicating online with some central Al-Qaeda operative. So they do it themselves on their computer. Why, if we can't discuss that openly when we see it actually happening as a very real possibility in this case, where are we? How do we prevent the threat?
Well, that's the whole point, is that those who cry Islamophobia do not want us to prevent the threat. We saw that, for example, with the Fort Hood, when the congressional report came out saying that the FBI had sufficient information necessary to have detected Major Nidal Hassan's radicalization, but failed to understand it and were prevented from acting on it because of the FBI's own policy to deny any link between radicalization to a violent form of Islam and Islamist terrorism. We saw the same thing in Boston, where police failed to investigate the Islamist Society of Boston, even though counterterrorism experts were warning of radicalization happening in the mosque. They were warning of Saudi funds going to fund the mosque, and yet everyone who warned about this was called an Islamophobe. Peter King was called an Islamophobe a couple years ago for warning that Al-Qaeda was recruiting within our borders and flying Americans overseas to train as jihadists, and it's all coming home to roost.
Which is fact, which we now know is fact. It's not opinion. It's really disturbing that this piece of the story has been so underreported and is obviously very potentially relevant to our safety and to understanding what we're in store for, depending on what the future holds. And it looks disturbing at the moment, Brooke. Thank you. Well, we'll find out.